예, 반갑습니다. 그 파트 1 챕터 1 재밌는 게 30분만 30분 분량으로 나눠서 그 계속 잘라서 가겠다는 굳은 결심은 어느 순간 무너지고 점점 늘어져서 30분에서 45분으로 45분에서 50분이 넘는 양으로 점점 늘어나더라고요. 예, 앞으로는 그러지 않겠습니다. 반성을 했습니다. 내용이 조금 애매하게 잘리더라도 30분 정도로 마무리를 하도록 노력을 하겠습니다. 오케이. Summary and Analysis를 진행을 할 건데 다시 말씀드리지만 애니얼 폼 할 때처럼 이렇게 딱딱 끊어지게 이렇게 안 됩니다. 클리프 노트하고 스파크 노트가 뜨문뜨문 두세 챕터를 이렇게 하나로 합쳐서 하는 경우가 굉장히 많아요. 그래서 애매하게 잘리는 경우가 꽤 많다는 거를 미리 말씀을 드립니다. 최대한 간단하게 가겠습니다. 워낙 기니까. 파트 1 챕터 1에 대한 클리프 노트 게 먼저 나오네요. 클리프 노트 게 먼저 나왔다, 스파크 노트 게 먼저 나왔다, 이렇게 하겠습니다. 그때 챕터에 따라서 다를 것 같아요. 서머리 먼저 봅시다. 클리프 노트는 항상 서머리가 좀 썰렁하죠? 이번에도 그런지 알바생에 따라서 달라지거든요. 이건 누가 했는지 모르겠네. On a bitter April day in London, Oceania, Winston Smith arrives at a small apartment. 본문에서는 플래시라 그랬죠. 근데 여기서는 아파트먼트라고 현대적인 용어를 쓰고 있고, on his lunch break, the face of Big Brother is everywhere. It is immediately obvious through Winston's musings that the political weather of Winston's London is grim and totalitarian. 이건 좀 더 가야 드러나겠지만 좀 명확하긴 하죠. Winston pours himself a large drink and sets about to commit an act punishable by death. 글을 쓰는 것, starting a diary. He believes he is fortunate because a small corner of his apartment. 본문에서 뭐라 그랬더라 이거를? Small corner of his apartment가 예, 본문에서는 다르게 했어요. 뭐라고 했더라? 생각이 안 나지 왜? 하여간 단어 하나 있어요. 넣어보세요. Is hidden from the telescreen, a device that allows him to be viewed and heard 24 hours a day by the authorities or Big Brother. authority라고 해도 되고 Big Brother라고 해도 되고. Here is where he begins the diary. Winston is struck by a pang of writer's block when he suddenly realized pang of writer's block. 오. 글을 쓰다 막히는 어려움. 본문에서 못 보던 표현이죠. When he suddenly realized that he doesn't know for whom he is writing the diary. 누구를 위해서 쓰는지. For future. 라고 기본적으로 생각하죠. For the unborn. In his panic, he begins to write a stream of consciousness account of recent trip to the movies. Stream of consciousness, 웬열? 의식의 흐름? 그런 거였나? 별로 못 느꼈는데 난. While writing this to the movies가 아니라 본문에서는 플래기라고 했었죠. While writing this, he has a memory of a significant happening earlier in the week in which he was simultaneously attracted and repelled by a young woman working in his building. 끌리기도 하고 스스로 싫어하기도 하고 그 이유는 뒤에서 나오죠. He felt as though she was following him. 이건 아닌 거 아직 안 나온 것 같은데. 이 부분은 아닌 것 같은데. He also remembers sharing a brief moment with O'Brien, a member of the inner party, an encounter in which Winston believes that O'Brien attempted to show solidarity with him against the tyranny of Big Brother. 자기만의 상상일 수도 있죠. He continues writing, this time with more substantive material about his feelings on the current environment in which he lives. He is entreated by a knock at the door. 심장이 꽝꽝하죠. 읽는 사람들도. 참 잘 쓴 첫 번째 챕터인 것 같기는 해요. Analysis. 항상 analysis가 좋았는데. The opening image of the work sets the foreboding tone. foreboding, 앞으로에 대한 예감이죠. presage라고 말해도 됩니다. presage는 좀 너무 어려운 단어다. That prevails throughout as the reader is introduced to Winston Smith, the fatalistic protagonist of the novel. protagonist는 주인공이란 뜻이고요. fatalist 그러면 fatalism, 운명주의, 뭐 그런 거. On a cold day in April, when the clocks were striking 13, immediately the author depicts a society in decay. Society in decay라고 말할 수 있나? By describing a setting of graded dust, hallways smelling of old cabbage and old rag mats, elevators, the lift not working, and electrical current that is turned off during daylight hours. 수도 있겠네. 상태들이 안 좋긴 하니까. The other main characters are introduced through Winston's perception of them. Julia, the dark-haired girl from the fiction department. 줄리아라고 아직 나오지 않았죠? 아, dark-haired girl이 줄리아구나. 여자 주인공이에요. Who in this part is described but as yet unnamed. 아직 이름은 안 알려졌고 causes him to feel a peculiar uneasiness which had fear mixed up in it as well as hostility whenever she was anywhere near him. 부정을 하죠. 조금 짜증도 나고. Winston suspects her to be a member of the third police. 본문에 나와 있는 표현으로 하면은 agent of the third police. Initially, he sees her as a symbol of social orthodoxy. That is, she possesses a general clean-mindedness, an enthusiastic adherent to the party line. Conversely, 반대로, Winston feels a certain comradeship with O'Brien, predicated on his secretly held belief that O'Brien's political orthodoxy was not perfect. 삐딱선탄이다. Winston developed this impression when he and O'Brien had once exchanged glances. 눈빛만으로 어떻게 알아? Big Brother, both a person and concept, is introduced very early on in posters that appear in Winston's building, bearing the caption, Big Brother is watching you. Finally, Emmanuel Goldstein, also a person and a concept, is introduced during a hype session. 사람이기도 하고 컨셉이기도 하다. 이렇게 볼 수도 있겠죠. The political environment is detailed through Winston's musings, as well as narrative descriptions of specific political entities. 직접적인 어떤 그 등장인물들. At the heart of political orthodoxy that exists is the process of controlling human thought. 그죠? 인간의 사고를 컨트롤하는 거죠. through the manipulation of language and information. 이거는 아직 구체적으로 자세하게 안 나왔습니다. Crucial to manipulating the language and information, individuals receive, doublethink and newspeak. 이거에 대한 자세한 내용은 우리 이거 어나리시스 끝나고 appendix를 먼저 한번 읽어봅시다. Doublethink is the act of holding simultaneously two opposite individual exclusive ideas or opinions and believing in both simultaneously and absolutely. 이거 아직 설명 안 나왔어요. appendix를 봐야 될 것 같아요. Doublethink, it requires using logic against logic or suspending disbelief in the contradiction. 이게 뭔 말이야? The three slogans of the party, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, are obvious examples of doublethink. 이게 doublethink 예라고 충돌되는 거를 동시에 같이 충돌되지 않는 거로 인식하는 것. The act of doublethink also occurs in more subtle details. 어떤 데에서? 그걸 하나씩 찾아가는 게 이 소설을 읽는 또 하나의 중요한 포인트겠네요. As Winston begins writing in the diary, he commits his first overt act. 밖으로 드러나는 rebellion against the party. He creates a piece of evidence that exists outside himself. 그저 다이어리가 He is still safe because no one else knows of his thoughts or his acts, but the reader shares the ominous mood created when Winston observes sooner or later they'll always got you. 곧 thought crime은 걸리고야 만다. Winston obviously knows the significance of his act. Nothing will ever be the same for him. The first chapter introduced the reader to a host of significant issues and images that become motifs that set the mood for and recur throughout the novel. 계속해서 반복된대요. The reader is not so subtly drawn. subtlety가 아니라 subtly겠죠? subtly drawn into a world of constant duplicity, 양면적인 duplicity, manipulation and surveillance. 혹은 의심, duplicity, 의심 혹은 양면성, manipulation and surveillance. The name of Winston's apartment, Victory Mansion. 그죠? 이런 것도 victory라는 말 계속 쓰는 거. For example, creates a particular mental image for the reader that is immediately contradicted by Orwell's observation that the hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and old rags. The lift, elevator seldom works, and the electricity is cut off during daylight hours. Hardly a description of one imagines of a structure with such an exalted name. 이름하고 빅토리 맨션, 맨션이라는 것 자체도 굉장히 고급스러운 어떤 주거 공간에 대한 이름이 있잖아요. 빅토리라는 말 그리고 맨션이라는 말에 어울리지 않죠. 이 내용들이. Big Brother, whose countenance purposely mirrors Stalin. 그의 모습이 스탈린? 아직 그 정도 안 나온 것 같은데. 블랙 무스타시. 이거 하나로 그냥 스탈린이야? And his pseudo omnipresence. 가짜의 어디에도 존재하는 것 같은. Introduced to the reader in the posters and on the telescreen. Although he never appears in person, 직접 나타나진 않지만 Big Brother is the dictator of record in Oceania, and the posters carry the caption, Big Brother is watching you. enhancing the menacing feeling of an evil environment. Threatening, menacing, threatening. Orwell alerts the reader's sense of anticipation and dread in his depiction of the bureaucracy and political structure of Oceania. 아직은 좀 덜 나오지 않았나? The Ministry of Truth, which rewrites history to suit the occasion. 이런 얘기 아직 안 나왔어요. The Ministry of Peace, which functions to wage war. The Ministry of Love, which maintains law and order and is the really frightening one. And the Ministry of Plenty, coupled with the Third Police. 아, 얘네가 Ministry of Plenty가 Third Police를 운영한다고? Ministry of Love가 하는 거 아니야? Too many hate sections. Antithetical national slogans. 아, 이 위에 거하고 아래 거하고 그 결합이 된다는 거죠. 이거랑 그죠? War is peace, freedom of speech, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. 오케이. 항상 그 어널리시스가 클리프 노트가 영향가가 있는 것 같아요. 오케이, 그 다음에 스파크 노트. 스파크 노트가 서머리 잘하죠. 이번 알바생도 서머리 잘하는지 한번 봅시다. On a cold day in April of 1984, a man named Winston Smith returned to his home, a dilapidated apartment. 쓰러져가는 그 정도는 아닌데. Called Victory Mansion. Thin, frail, and 39 years old, it is painful for him to trudge up the stairs. Trudge up. 처음 보는 단어다. 대충 예상은 되죠? 힘들게 꾸역꾸역 올라가는 그런 거를 나타내는 것 같아요. The stairs because he has a varicose ulcer above his right ankle. The elevator is always out of service, so he does not try to use it. As he climbs the staircase, he is greeted on each side landing by a poster depicting an enormous face, understood by the words, underscored by the words, Big Brother is watching you. Winston is an insignificant officer in the party. insignificant라는 말이 아직 안 나왔죠? 그런 느낌은 없었는데 아직. The totalitarian political regime that rules all of Airstrip 1, the land that used to be called England. 이 얘기도 아직 안 나왔죠? As part of the larger state of Oceania. Though Winston is technically a member of the ruling class, his life is still under the party's oppressive political control. 살짝 나오긴 하죠. 왜냐면 파티 멤버라고 나오잖아요. 그러니까 technically ruling class는 맞는 것 같아요. 그죠? In his apartment, an instrument called a telescreen, which is always on, 항상 켜져 있는, spouting propaganda, 이거 퍼뜨리는, through which the third police are known to monitor the actions of citizens, shows a drill report about pig iron. pig iron이 뭔지 모르겠어요. Winston keeps his back to the screen. 등을 지고 있죠. From his window, he sees the Ministry of Truth, where he works as a propaganda officer, altering historical records to match the party's official version of past events. 이 부분도 아직 안 나왔죠. Winston thinks about the other ministries that exist as part of party's governmental apparatus. The Ministry of Peace, which wages war, the Ministry of Plenty, which plans economic shortages, and the dreaded mystery of love, the center of the inner party's loathsome activities. From a drawer in a little alcove. 아, 드디어 생각났다. 앞에서 얘기했던 거, 구석, alcove. 생각이 난 걸 알고 이렇게 써있네. Hidden from the telescreen, Winston pulls out a small diary he recently purchased. He found the diary in a second-hand store. second-hand겠죠? 그죠? 새 거는 아니었죠. 40년도 더 된 거래니까. In the proletarian district. 근데 요거를 줄여서 그냥 prol district라 그러잖아요. 본문에는 where the very poor live relatively unimpeded by party monitoring. 이거에 침범 당하지 않고 이렇게 표현하는 게 맞나? 이렇게 표현할 수도 있죠. The poor, as they are called, are so impoverished and insignificant that the party does not consider them a threat to its power. 이것도 아직은 안 나왔죠. Winston begins to write in his diary, although he realized that this constitutes an act of rebellion against the party. He describes the films he watched the night before. He thinks about his lust and hatred for a dark-haired girl who works in the fiction department at the Ministry of Truth, and about an important inner party member named O'Brien, a man he is sure is an enemy of the party. 이렇게 말할 수 있나? 너무 한쪽 측면으로 얘기하네요. 자기하고 같은 거라고 생각했지 enemy of the party라고는 아직 얘기 안 했죠. Winston remembers the moment before the day's 2-minute hate, an assembly during which party orators whipped the populace into a frenzy of hatred against the enemies of Oceania. Just before the hate began, Winston knew he hated Big Brother and saw the same loathing in O'Brien's eyes. 여긴 괜찮고요. Winston looks down and realizes that he has written down with Big Brother over and over again in his diary. He has committed thought crime, the most unpardonable crime, and he knows that the thought police will seize him sooner or later. Just then, there is a knock at the door. 삐까삐까한데? 애니멀 폼에서는 차이가 많이 났는데 클리프 노트나 아니면 이 지금 하는 스파크 노트나 알바생들이 삐까삐까한데요. 이제는 이거는 1984는 어널리시스는 뭐라고 했을까? 애니멀 폼은 영 시원찮았잖아요. The first few chapters of 1984 are devoted to introducing the major characters and themes of the novel. These chapters also acquaint the readers, 익숙해지게 드러내주는 거죠. With the harsh and oppressive world in which the novel's protagonist, Winston Smith, lives. It is from Winston's perspective that the reader witnesses the brutal physical and psychological cruelties wrought upon the people by the government. 표현이 이쁘네요. 사람들에게 만들어진 Orwell's main goals in 1984 are to depict the frightening techniques a totalitarian government in which a single ruling class possesses absolute power might use to control its subjects. 그 자기의 통치의 대상들 subjects라고 하는 겁니다. And to illustrate the extent of the control that government is able to exert. To this end, Orwell offers a protagonist who has been subject to power control all of his life but who has arrived at a dim idea of rebellion and freedom. 표현 이쁘게 잘한다. 개기기 시작하는 거죠. Unlike virtually anyone else in Airstrip 1, Winston seems to understand that he might be happier if he were free. 그죠? Orwell emphasizes the fact that in the world of Airstrip 1, freedom is a shocking and alien notion. 이게 살짝 드러나죠. 생각도 못하니까. Simply writing in a diary, an act of self-expression, is an unpardonable crime. He also highlights the extent of government control by describing how the party watches its members through the giant telescreens in their homes. The panic that grabs hold of Winston when he realized that he has written down his big brother evidences, 보여준다는 거죠. shows, 쉬운다는 거죠. His certainty in the pervasive omniscience of the party, 다 알고 있다, and the efficiency of the monitoring technique. Winston's diary entry, his first overt act of rebellion, is the primary plot development in this chapter. It illustrates Winston's desire, however slight, 아무리 사소해도, to break free of the party's total control. 구석탱이에 숨어서 몰래 하잖아요. Winston's hatred of party oppression has been festering for some time. developing이라고 해도 되고요. Possibly even for most of his life. It is important to note that the novel, however, opens on the day that this hatred finds an active expression. Winston's instinct to rebel singles him out of the sheep-like masses. sheep이 좀 복종적인, obedient 이런 특성들을 부여를 하고 있는 거죠. Unlike the rest of the general public who do not find the party's contradictions problematic, Winston is aware of himself as an entity separate from the totalitarian state. 자기는 separate된 상태의 존재이다. He realized that writing in the diary has altered his life irrevocably, 돌이킬 수 없게, and that he is no longer simply another citizen of Oceania. In writing in the diary, he becomes a thought criminal. thought crime을 저지른 사람이니까 thought criminal이라고 말할 수 있죠. And he considers himself doomed from the very start. Thought crime was not a thing that could be concealed forever. Sooner or later, they are bound to get you. 난 결국 잡힐 거야. One of the most important themes of 1984 is governmental use of psychological manipulation and physical control as a means of maintaining its power. 나중에 이게 아직 저작권이 그냥 해볼까? 엘더스 헉슬리의 브레이브 뉴 월드 있잖아요. 이게 참 항상 비교가 되는 작품이거든요. 엘더스 헉슬리가 쓴 브레이브 뉴 월드. 거기선 이렇게 안 나와요. 거기선 미래가 이렇게 억압적인 게 아니라 약물 같은 거를 이용해서 인간들을 아예 그냥 쾌락에 빠지게 만들어서 이런 전복적인 생각을 아예 못하게 이렇게 만든다고 설정이 되거든요. 그거랑 비교해 보면 현대 사회에 대한 어떤 두 가지 가장 큰 버전, 현대 사회는 과연 알덕스 슬리가 생각했던 브레이브 뉴 월드냐 아니면 조지 오웰이 생각했던 1984에 나오는 사회이냐. 이 양극단적인 완전한 극단은 아니지만 그런 두 개의 버전들을 이렇게 비교하면서 생각해 보면 현대 사회에 대한 이해가 조금 이렇게 한눈에 이렇게 보이는 그런 측면들이 있거든요. 이것도 한번 해보고 싶네요. 알더석슬은 이렇게는 안 된다는 거예요. 인간들은 이렇게 누르면 폭발한다는 거죠. 하여간 그렇습니다. 그분의 생각은. As a means of maintaining its power. This theme is present in chapter 1. As Winston's grasping at freedom illustrates the terrifying extent to which citizens are not in control of their own minds. The telescreens in their homes blare out. blare out이라고 안 했는데, babbling out이라고 했는데, a constant stream of propaganda, touting the greatness of Oceania. 오세아니아가 뭐 위대하다, and the success of the party in ruling it. 아직 이거 안 나왔는데. Each day, citizens are required to attend the 2-minute hate, an intense mass rally in which they are primed with fury and hatred for Oceania's rival nations, venting their own pent-up emotions in the process. 이런 면이 있죠. 자기들의 그 쌓인 그 감정들을 여기다 풀어내는 거죠. mass rally라는 말이 딱 맞네요. The government, meanwhile, expresses its role in an outlandishly dishonest fashion, as seen in the stark contradiction between the name and function of each of its ministries. 아니 이거는 그 더블think의 한 예 아닌가? The net effect of this psychological manipulation is a complete breakdown of the independence of an individual's mind. Independence and will are replaced by a fear of and faith in the party. Indeed, individual thought has become so alien. 그죠? 이게 너무나 낯선 것이 되죠. The population accepts that the party has made it a crime. 이걸 받아들이죠. 아직까지는 그래도 멀쩡하게 돌아가는데 이게 그 챕터가 가면서 어떤 건 있다가 어떤 건 없다가 뭐 섞이다가 막 그럽니다. 오케이. 이거를 정리를 한 뭐 애니메이션이나 아니면 그 짧은 그런 서머리 같은 것들이 있으면 같이 아래다 붙여 볼게요. 오케이, that's it. 어펜딕스에서 봅시다. 빠이빠이.